Okay, guys, good evening. Welcome to March, when we should be in spring training, and of course, we have nothing. Thank you for joining Baltimore Babe Ruth chapter. This is the first meeting under our new regime. We recently held elections, a couple of us switched positions, but nothing's going to change. We're going to keep doing what we always did, and hopefully we'll even do a little more and get back to in-person stuff in the very near future. For those of you who submitted or still wish to submit, our Baltimore Chop newsletter will be coming out in the next week or so. If you still want to get stuff in, I'm not sure if there's still room, but send to our editor, Ruth. If you need the contact information, let me know. SABR 50 is coming together even without the season at the moment. Headquarters will let you guys know that should be on sale in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Prices for the convention as well as the hotel at the Hyatt. We actually have a pretty good crowd. I didn't expect as many today, given that it's Ash Wednesday, and I know some people do go to services and whatnot. So, Mike Gimbel, you guys probably know his bio by now, so I don't have to go into it, but he's up in my home area of northeastern Pennsylvania. Ironically, he was one of the first 5 presenters at the very first SABR Day for the Baltimore chapter back in January of 2016 at Towson University. So he's been with us all along. Really enjoy hearing his presentations. He is the co-host tonight, so should be able to share his screens with you. Stay on mute if you don't mind, and if you have any questions, either save them till the end or put them in the chat for Mike. So Mike, you can unmute and take over as soon as you're ready. Still on mute, Mike.
Okay, there it is. Okay, I hit unmute. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, first of all, of course, I want to thank the Babe Ruth chapter, the Baltimore Babe Ruth chapter, for inviting me, and thanking Peter Kuba directly for this invitation. I also want to take a thank you out to Retro Sheet, which provides the game play-by-play data for the software that I do. Now, can you guys still hear me? Good, okay. Can I ask you my permission to make remarks about the lockout that's taking place? Do I have your permission to do that?
Sure.
Okay, I don't hear. Okay. You know me from my baseball, but on the other side, at the same time I was advising the major league teams, I was on the executive board of a very large union in New York City, representing over 7,000 workers. And I was on 8 different contract negotiating bargaining teams. And for a short time, I was the chief negotiator for the entire union. Okay, so, and at the same time as I was advising the Montreal and Boston. Okay, now my union was the union that ran the cleanup of Ground Zero after 9/11 and ran the rebuilding of the subway system under the World Trade Center. That was my union that ran those things. Okay, so in what we did when we contract negotiated, we made it clear that our jobs depended on protecting the services to the people of the city. Without those services, we have no jobs. So the communities and us had to be in lockstep, and that's how I view also what the situation is with the player union. They are not just the workers, they are the product itself. And what you have is a situation where they're fighting for the fans. If you don't realize it, what is competitive balance? The competitive balance demand, which is what the union is fighting for, is to make sure that teams in Pittsburgh and all the smaller can be on the same level playing field as the teams in New York and the big market teams. Right now, what you have, and you've had for a century, is the big market teams using the rest of the major league teams as their farm system. And the main culprit is the Yankees. They started out by buying Babe Ruth, but they kind of all the way along doing the same thing. They not only have their own farm system, but because the other teams can't afford, because there's no competitive balance, they are able to literally rip off the other teams. And you do not have, when the season starts, you have Pittsburgh and you have the Yankees or whoever, the small versus the big, and essentially one team is coming in with ringers. It is the ultimate cheating. And so to me, the fans in every city, especially in the smaller cities, should have banners out saying, yay to competitive balance. Don't the Pittsburgh Pirate fans want to have a team that can compete with the big market teams? This is different from the other sports, but because there's no sharing of revenue here. So that's what I wanted to say, because I don't think this is going to be a short lockout. This is going to be a long one. And there's going to be a lot of propaganda back and forth and a lot of things that said, but the players are the game. The players are the ones interested in competitive balance because the salaries are protected that way as well. Yes, they want more money, but just like us, when we negotiated contract with the city of New York, yes, we wanted more money, but our jobs depended on protecting the services to the people of New York. So the two go together. So that's just what I wanted to say in reference to this lockout. As you can tell, I'm totally pro-union on this, and I don't. What are the owners? What part do they play in the game? They're no part of the game. The players are the workers, and the players are the game itself. Okay, so now I'll go into, and I'll tell you when I need to have this screen shared. Okay, think about this conundrum. How is it possible for Tampa Bay, with minimal resources, and having to allow year after year their star players to go, simply to go to the big market teams, and yet not only remain competitive, but are usually in the playoffs, if not have a tremendous record? That should not be possible, but it is happening right in front of our eyes. So what does that mean? It means that the overwhelming majority of the Major League Baseball front offices have some level of incompetence in evaluating their players and their teams and other players from other teams. So what is the source of that incompetence? Well, that's why I'm here today. Today's innovations in player evaluation are far greater than anything I could have imagined when I started out 3 decades ago. With launch angle and all this other stuff that's there, that's incredible, wonderful, and the in-game tactical switches and everything. That's something that I could never have imagined when I started out. However, there's a problem. All these bits of information that they are gathering for the in-game and so on are not coordinated with evaluating the players in their total performance. It's been amazing to me that to see that, especially after what I published 3 decades ago. I would have thought that would have been understood, but it's obviously not, because bean counting is not a substitute for testing theory, and it's no substitute for logic and the scientific method. I've been shocked by how you've got these fabulous innovations, and yet I watch trades and player moves and everything like that, and I say, what are they doing? This is nonsense. How are they doing this evaluation? They're seeing the trees, but they're not seeing the forest. It's an amazing situation. War is part of the problem, and OPS is also part of the problem. Okay, they obscure the ability to understand the player performance. War has got a number of problems that I could not understand why they were not being taken care of, inside and outside the formula. Inside the formula, you have a portion put into all their formulas because of called the positional adjustment, the positional evaluation in the formula. That's complete nonsense. You compare a shortstop to a shortstop, you compare a first baseman to a first baseman, a DH to a DH, a starting pitcher to a starting pitcher, a reliever to a reliever. That's it. You don't compare a shortstop to a DH. You don't raise the value of the shortstop and devalue the value of David Ortiz because he's a DH. It's nonsense. But shortstops are great on defense. No, they're not. No position is better than any other on defense. If you have 30 starters in the major leagues, by definition, 15 are better than average, 15 are below average. The median is 0. What's the median on defense for a DH? 0. A DH is equal to the median shortstop on defense because they're both zeros. Okay, it's okay. That's one of the problems. Another problem is that WAR compares the player to a replacement player. Who wants a replacement player? You don't. That's nuts. You don't compare Tom Brady as quarterback to a quarterback that's on somebody else's bench or sitting on the sideline. You compare players to players that are on the field starting at that position. In other words, at each position, take first base, you compare the top 30, because there's 30 teams, the 31st baseman. There's going to be 15 that are earning you runs and 15 that are going to be losing you runs. By definition, 15 will be better, 15 will be poorer, yet they're all qualified to start because you have 30 teams. So that's who you compare. It's apples to apples. So when you're comparing it to a replacement, it makes absolutely no sense. You need to know how much better your player is against the other player on the other team starting today on that field. How much better or worse is my player, my starting shortstop, my starting first baseman, my starting second baseman to the starting first baseman, second baseman, or shortstop on the other team. That's it. How much is he worse? How much is he better? So now, another problem with with WAR and all these other formulas, they don't really take into account on-base percentage properly, or at all, really, because on-base percentage, unlike slugging percentage, is a variable. Slugging is just you add up. But on base percentage determines the value of all other of your singles, doubles, and triples, because it determines how many people are on base for the doubles, singles, triples, and so on. So it's a variable. And so a player with a 300 on base percentage versus a player with a 400 base percentage is a huge difference in run scoring, because on base percentage determines, for the most part, your run scoring as a team. Okay. Now, because there are only 27 outs in a game, that's why the on base is so incredibly important. You really, really have to save those outs. And those players who have very low on base percentage are preventing a tremendous amount of run scoring by the rest of the players behind them. However, as I've said previously, official on-base percentage is not figured correctly, because every offensive hit also drives in a certain amount of runs. It doesn't only put a player on base, it also knocks in it. And if a home run is listed as an increase in on-base percentage, but nobody's on base after the home run, whoever was on base has been removed, and the hitter is also removed. It can't be put in on the on-base percentage side. You want to know from the on-base percentage side how many runners are going to be on base after that hitter hits. Because you have to figure out what the value of the hitter is afterwards. That value of the hitter goes up if there's people on base. If there's nobody on base, it goes down. The home run actually clears everybody. It's the old rally killer. It's wonderful. It's on the, you have to give it the proper value, but it's on the drive-in side. On the setup side, setting up the rest of the lineup to score, it has the opposite effect. And that's, so you have, when you're doing your formula, you have to understand that the on-base portion is variable. And you have to run your software or your formulas so that take that into account to understand both the hitter and the pitcher, because putting lots of people on base is critical to an offense. It's absolutely critical. And if a pitcher puts a lot of people on base, that affects their own run scoring enormously. Same way with a hitter. Okay, so now, before I go to the screens and to the team evaluation from 2020, from last year, and then the player evaluations for the coming season, I want to make sure that you understand that both screens are equally valuable, even though they're different, even though the values are different, because the team is rated on the amount of runs produced. That's a quantity, whereas the players are rated on a quality per at bat, per out created, and therefore a first baseman on the team there may be a positive in run scoring, but a negative on the player evaluation, because all the hitters at first base are big hitters, pretty much. So most of your first basemen are going to be pluses in run scoring on the team. But when you compare player to player, they need to be in the top 15 to be a plus. And so that the catcher position, the players may be negative on the team side, but when you're measuring catcher versus catcher, because that's a low hitting position, the catcher who's negative here could be plus on the player evaluation, because you're comparing position within the position, not overall in a quantity basis, as I'm doing in the team. Okay, before I start now to go to my screens, do you have any questions? No questions? No questions? Okay. Then let me go to the screens. Can everybody see that screen? I can't see you saying. I'm going to assume unless you interrupt, that you see the screen. Let's look at the Baltimore Orioles. This is the Babe Ruth chapter.
We don't see the screen.
You don't see it? Do you
No.
see it?
No.
You don't see the screen?
No, I don't see the screen either.
Let me go back. Let me go back to your this way. Okay, I have to hit share screen, right? Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Okay. Okay, entire screen. Okay. And share or audio. Share entire screen. Share.
There you go. Mike, you're muted now. Mike, you're muted.
Hello.
Okay.
Mike, you need to unmute.
Mike, you need to unmute.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I assume you can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
But the sharing the screen doesn't allow me to go to here. Can you see me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
No.
It was on before.
Just a second. Shit. Sorry, my language.
I heard that.
That's that.
Seems you can't share and unmute at the same time.
It doesn't want to allow me to do to unmute.
You are unmuted.
I know now, but not when I go to the see if I can do this partially. Share system audio. I've clicked that. Click this. And
Can't hear you.
Well, it's something, we're viewing something here.
share.
We're doing something here.
This is, if I go back in and go from a different, let me go in from a different way. Okay, let me go in from a different way. This is not working this way. Let me go in from, okay. Directly from Zoom.
The problem is that
The problem is that
you're clicking to share your computer audio,
share your
and
computer
when it
audio.
does that, it thinks you're
And when it
playing
does
the
that, it
video
thinks
from
you're
your
playing
computer.
the
You want to
video
hear
from
that
your
sound.
computer. You want to hear that sound.
Don't click that. Just
Oh,
click share
Don't click
screen.
that. Just click share screen.
Oh, okay. Let me just go back then. Okay, so don't click that. Okay.
Yeah, do not.
When
Don't
I go
click
to
share
share
audio.
Don't click share audio.
Okay, I won't. Okay, share. Okay, let's see. Let me just see if that works.
It's working now.
Is that working?
It's working now.
Okay, thank you. That was hard. Okay, so here we're looking at the Baltimore Orioles, who only won 52 games last year. Now, if you look at this column, headed by hitting where my cursor is, this column right here, this is the hitting runs, the runs produced by the hitter. This column next to it is the defense by that hitter. And this, the final column, is the total of the two on the hitter side. The Cedric Mullins is in green because he produced more than double-digit runs, and almost five wins for the team on his own. It's 5 runs per win, and it was tremendous. That's what I put all those top players in their performance in the green. You only had 3 other players who were even positive in terms of offense. So you see the 3 behind that, and you have 4 players at the very bottom which were double-digit negative in terms of runs versus the median player. And overall, the bottom of that shows that your offensive players surrendered almost 84 runs to the opposition during the year. Now we go over to the pitcher side. You have nobody in the pitcher side that's in double digits, but John Means is almost there. Overall, you have many more pitchers that are in the positive, and you don't have anybody in the negative yet. Still, you were way down, almost 57 runs down on the pitcher side. So both sides were pretty terrible. And you have, when you combine the two, you're about 140 runs down at 5 runs per win. That's 28 runs down. Your record was 52. You should have won about 53. So that's almost perfect. The record you have was exactly what you should have had, based on your offense and your defense. I should mention that the runs are that you see here are based on the formula. RPA is runs, those runs divided by plate appearances. This is runs divided by the outs, so either produced or surrendered here, the RPO. And that's what I now go by, mostly the RPO. Okay, so you see there's Baltimore. It was not a good season. You did have one premier player during the year, Cedric Mullins. Now we come to the Boston Red Sox, who had a pretty good season in terms of their record. Their offense was only a plus 19 runs, essentially. You have your three double-digit players, a fourth one who is really as a double because he came over in a trade. So when you combine the two, he also was a double-digit performer. But they had two players who were way, way negative in terms of runs. Barwin Gonzalez and Christian Vasquez. Now on the pitcher's side, almost the same, 19 runs plus. So this is not a team that was a powerhouse. So this is a team that is about 8 games where it should have won about 89. They won 92. So it's close to what would have been predicted by the runs, although they did slightly overperform. As an 89 win team, essentially, they really only had one pitcher that was in the double digits, Nathan Eovaldi. Again, like Baltimore, there was nobody in double digits negative. So overall, a decent pitching staff, and a decent offensive team, but nothing to shout about. An 89 win team, but not a team that you would have expected to go to win the World Series. Now, here's the White Sox. Had a pretty good year, 93 win year team. They had two players in double digits and a third almost there. Luis Robert, in just essentially a half a season, was tremendous year in that half season. Yasmani Gonzalez and Yohan Moncada almost made it up there, and Tim Anderson almost as well. They had a double-digit player losing runs for them, Eleury Garcia. The pitching, their offense was actually rather poor for a 93 win team. They were below average offense, 12 runs below, whereas their pitching was their huge, very strong pitching team, very strong at the top with Carlos Rodon and Lance Lynn, and no double-digit negative. But this is a team that should have won about 90 games. It's not very far off from what they in the 93, but this, from the runs, it should have been about a 90, maybe a 91 win team. Okay, the Cleveland Indians, their overall offense, as you could see, minus 16 runs. They had one huge star in Jose Ramirez. His value to the team was more than 5 wins, and several solid players, but they also had two players who were hugely negative, Owen Miller and Austin Hedges. And on the pitching side, almost balanced, 16 runs plus versus the 16 runs. They should have been an 81 win team. They won 80. They had the absolute really the proper record for what the run scoring should have been. Their pitching was headed up by their closer, Emmanuel Claes and Cal Quantrill, both in double digits. The one pitcher in double negatives, Sam Henkes. We move over to the Detroit Tigers, who are starting to come on a bit. On their offense was slightly above average, just slightly, with two double-digit players, including the young Rule 5 pick Akil Badu, who, by the way, should have been Rookie of the Year. He, in my numbers, as much as I like Randy Arozarena, I have him second to Badu. And Badu didn't get a single vote for Rookie of the Year, despite the fact that he should have been the Rookie of the Year. This is a player they can build around for the future of their franchise. Okay, they had two double negative guys, Harold Castro and the Castro boys, and Willie Castro. Now, as far as the pitching goes, no premier pitcher. Best was the reliever Spencer Turnbull. So the pitching was horrendous, with 4 pitchers, Farmer, Urena, Screwball, and Garcia being double-digit negative pitchers. So they have to improve their pitching next year to go with their obvious improvement on the hitting side. So this is should have been about a 69 win team. They overperformed at 77, but they have now the start of a formation for having their team offense. They need to get some pitching. Here's the Houston Astros, who went to the World Series despite only winning 95 games, less than Tampa Bay and some of the others. So take a look at the offense. Plus 81 runs on offense. 5 double-digit players. Tucker, Altuve, Correa, Alvarez, and Gurriel. Tremendous on-field team. So they clear the pitching plan. Solid pitching, plus 22 runs, with Lance McCullers being the single double-digit pitcher, and Ryan Presley, closer, almost being double-digit. Overall, that means 103 runs. This is a team that should have won 101 games. So now you see why they were so strong in the playoffs. They actually underperformed. This was a 101 win team at 195. When they got to the playoffs, you can see why they were so strong. Kansas City Royals. Well, they have one double-digit offensive player. You know who he is, Salvador Perez. Benintendi was almost into the double digit. But overall, their offense, the players on the field were down over 31 runs. And you go on to the pitching, they have no double-digit plus or minus. And a pretty average pitching staff, just down 2 runs. So you're down about, should be about a 74, 75 win team. They won 74 games, right on the dot. Okay. The Angels. This is a team traditionally has the best, has Babe Ruth on the team and Mike Trout, and traditionally puts garbage around them. And they are ruining his career in many ways. As you can see, there's 3 double-digit players. Mike Trout barely played, and he still was in double digits. He was only 117 at bats, and he still was 11 runs to a plus. So you see, Ohtani was way up there. That's a tremendous number, but there's somebody who beat him out, who should have been Rookie of the Year. And I'm including his pitching. We'll get over to you have Ohtani. It's his offense that gets him there. You can see the 4 players in the bottom that really killed their offense totally. On the pitching side, they were plus, just barely, a little over 5.5 runs. 1 double-digit pitcher in Alex Cobb. Ohtani was a plus, but not by much as a pitcher. Too many people concentrate on the strikeouts. Strikeouts are just another out. So when you look at the 2, you see this is a team that should have been about 9 games under, which would have been about 72. They actually overperformed at 77. This should have been about a 72 win team. But just, either way, this is not a team that, unless they start to put more players around their stars, they aren't going to go anywhere. Minnesota. One of my favorite players in the game. He only played about less than half the season, and look for the numbers it runs. if you put that out to the full season, he's the best player probably in baseball, at least for last season. And you see the other two players that they have in the double digit, but again they have these two drags in the overall offense because there's not that many of the positives, too many of these negatives. So it's a -5 runs for the offense for the season. And for the pitching, yes, you have one. The real Cy Young Award winner in the American League was Jose Berrios. Oh God. Get the okay. Could you really? So Berrios, tremendous year both between here and Toronto. He should have been the American League Cy Young. They of course had two pitchers who really killed them in terms of their numbers, and their overall pitching was -35 runs. Overall, -40 runs, down 8 down, which is 73 wins, which is exact. Their total came exact. Okay, should have been 73 and was 73. Now we come to the Yankees, who won 92 games, but look at their offense, -27 runs. Only two double-digit, one enormous, Aaron Judge, but nothing much below that. Almost this long list of negatives. That is what drowned this small group of positives. It become 27 down. Their pitching +37. That's very good. But when you look at this is a team that should have won only maybe 83, 84 games. That's all. They way overperformed. They had one double-digit pitcher, Loizaga. Garrett Cole almost got there. But again, people focus in on the strikeouts when they evaluate pitchers. That's all an effect of fantasy baseball. It's a negative effect on how you judge players. Again, a strikeout is just another out. It's not the way to evaluate a pitcher. And yes, if you have him on fantasy baseball, you're loving him, but that's not real baseball. So you have a good pitching staff here, but not enough to overcome that problem with on the offense. Now we move along to Oakland, which won 86 games. They have 3 double-digit players, and the one close up, and one really terrible, Elvis Andrus. I don't know why they picked him up. He's been terrible for years, and he really hurt the team. But overall, because of what they have on top, they were still +21 runs on the offensive side and 21 runs on the pitch. Very well balanced team. 2 double-digit pitchers in Bassett and Montaz. Not a single negative double-digit. So this is a team that should have won 89 to 90 games. It won 86, close, but they should have won a couple more games. Okay, here's a team that really overperformed and really were lucky to get the record they did and to contend as long as they did. And that is Seattle. They have 1 double-digit player in Mitch Haniger, but overall, they're very slim at the top, and a long list of negative performances, a total of -34 runs on offense, and only +6 on the pitching side. It's a good, extensive group of solid pitching, with one pitcher who was very bad in Sheffield. Overall, this is a team that should have been below 500 total. This is a mid-70s win team. They're way overperformed what they should have been. This is, they're in probably for a bad surprise this coming year. Here's Tampa Bay. with the best offense in baseball. Look at that, 106 runs. And you look at the players at the top. Now notice number 4, Brad Phillips. Wait a minute, he's not even a starting player. How's he up and worth almost over 2.5 wins? Well, that's what Tampa Bay does. They identify players who can play, and they don't have to start. They put their whole roster into performing. And look at what he does. On the hitting side, almost 6.5 runs. On the defense side, about 6.5 runs. He's a fantastic defensive player with a really good offense player at the same time. And no other team would have even picked him up and maybe probably even put him in the minor leagues. They would have thought nothing of him. This is a player that was not a surprise when he did what he did in the playoffs in 2020. I was laughing at the announcers when he was going to the bat, like what are they going to do? They got the Brett Phillips coming up. Well, he was doing that year exactly what he did this year. He's a player, and they recognize it. And you have a whole roster of players who were, in many cases, thrown away by other teams or traded to them, and voila. Even though they give up all their stars regularly, look at that. There's the best offense in baseball, 106.46 runs. And on the pitching side, well, that's where it was a very unbalanced team. And you saw that in the playoffs. They didn't have a strong, it is a plus, but it's not what you would have wanted in the playoffs. Their only double-digit high is the reliever, Colin McHugh. They have a lot of plus. See, they accumulate tremendous numbers of plus pitchers. And so that's worked out fine in the regular season. But you've got to match up with the top pitchers and so this was an unbalanced team. But still, they only had one, and I know why they picked up Michael Wacha, even though he's been terrible for years, is that they were desperate to get somebody to pitch innings for them. But it was obvious, even before the season started, that was never going to happen. He was not going to perform. So when you're talking about 115 runs, you're talking about a team that should have won maybe 104, not just 100. But you understand they're in that Eastern Division, playing the Yankees, playing the Boston, playing Toronto. That's so that will bring down the number of wins to some extent because they're playing so many games against good the other teams, almost equal value. Okay, we now come to the Texas Rangers. They're one double-digit guy who's also picked up some runs when he was with the Yankees, Joey Gallo, but almost nothing after that. So all negative and +2 players that really were totally negative. So they're almost 68 runs down on offense. And then on the pitching staff, almost the same, 45. This terrible team. But yet they had a double-digit pitcher who then went to the National League and then also performed well there. He had a tremendous season. Kyle Gibson, a surprise season. And they had a fair number of decent pitchers. But at the bottom, they had 3 pitchers that absolutely assassinated the team. And overall, this is 112 runs down. So you're talking about 22, 23 games down, which means they should have won 58, 59 games. They won 60. So that's right on target. Okay. Toronto. Now, this is the team I really want to highlight because the misunderstandings of this when I get to the pitching staff is incredible. First of all, Vlad Guerrero was the actual MVP of the American League. Marcus Semien was the 3rd best player. You had Ohtani number 2 and Semien. They got 2 of the top 3 players, and Teoscar Hernandez was right there with them almost. This was a tremendous offensive team, just a little bit less than Then Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was 106. This is over 92 runs plus on the offensive side. Phenomenal offense. Okay, now we go to the pitching side. An unbalanced team, just like Tampa Bay, unbalanced, not enough pitching. Only one pitcher in double digit. That's the rookie, came up in midseason. Alec Manoah, he's going to be a tremendous pitcher. Here's your Cy Young winner. This is what I would point out. Your Cy Young winner was the 5th best pitcher on his own team. Let alone this RPO that he had in this, and this is his best season. Okay, his previous season was much worse. This was his best season. You know what that's equal to? That's not even equal to a number 1 starter. There's 30 teams, there's 30 starters that are number 1 starters. Number 2 starters are the next 30. He's in the that 140 would put him in the upper half of the number 2 starters. So that performance was about one of the top 45 performances in last year. And he gets the Cy Young. Why does he get the Cy Young? Look at the strikeouts. The emphasis on fantasy baseball nonsense is ridiculous. The actual should have won the Cy Young is Jose Berrios, who even in the short time with Toronto produced more for the team than did Robbie Ray. Now, another pitcher I want to highlight here is Steven Matz. Steven Matz just got a 4-year, $44 million contract from St. Louis. I was shocked. There are 5 starters per team, 30 teams. That's 150 pitchers are qualified to start in the major leagues according to my ratings. Guess what number Steven Matz was? He was the 151st best pitcher in baseball over 3-year average, meaning he's not even qualified to start in the major league. However, yes, this past season he was slightly plus. But what is that 154 RPO equal to? That's equal to a high number 4 starter. So what St. Louis is getting on his best season, which is last season, is a pitcher you don't want in a contender. It's a number 4 starter. For a premier starting pitcher, you got to be in the top half, which is in the top 75. That's the top 2.5 starters. You have 30 number 1 starters, 30 number 2 starters, and then the top 15 of the number 3 starters is at the end of your premier group. He's down. His best season is in the upper number 4 starter, and he got a $44 million 4-year contract from St. Louis. If that doesn't show what the problems in the front offices in the major leagues, I don't know. Okay, just take a second while I go to the National League. Oh, there we are. Okay, here we are. Starting, it's all alphabetical. Okay. So Arizona, just like Baltimore, 52-win season. This is a team which his offensive players were down 47 runs, only one double-digit player, Escobar. Ketel Marte, half a season almost made it into the double digits, and Nick Ahmed was negative over 11 runs. On the pitching side, wow! Look at that number. Is there a worse pitching staff in baseball? 100 runs down. Their best pitcher was a plus 4.5 runs. That's astoundingly bad. That's almost 150. This is a 52 win team, right on the dot. 52 wins right on the dot from the numbers. They deserve their record. Okay. Now here's an interesting one. Atlanta won only 88 games, and then went on to easily win the World Series. What happened? Well, surprised like Houston, they way underperformed during the season. Here's your offense, almost 68 runs to the plus, despite one player being double-digit negative. You have 5 double-digit players, almost a 6th with Swanson. And so you have here a tremendous production on the offensive. What about the pitching? Very good pitching. 2 double-digit pitchers in Charlie Morton and Max Fried, almost a third in their relief pitcher, Tyler Matzek. No double, it's negative. This is a 95 win, a 95 run 19. This is a 100 win team. They underperformed enormously during the regular season. This team should have won 100 games. Now you see why they did what they did in the World Series, in the playoffs. The regular season was a variation that was a bad indication of what they were going to be doing in the playoffs. They fooled everybody, and they won it all. The Cubs, here's the Cubs, sad Cubs that way overperformed even at 71 wins. This is almost 30 runs down. David Bote, double-digit down. They had 2 double digits plus. Both came up at the midseason. Wisdom and Schwindel. Bryant has double-digit, but this is the portion that he got for Chicago, not San Francisco. Okay, on the pitching side, horrendous pitching, even worse than the hitting, 64 down, no double-digit pitchers. Kimbrel was their best, barely over Chafin. It's all the bullpen that they were the pluses by. And you can be fooled by the bullpen pluses because the bullpen pitchers are expected to have better ratings. So when you compare, when they go into the comparison, the relief pitchers versus the relief pitchers, you'll see some of these plus pitchers will be negative on the player ratings. And Arrieta, of course, was horrible at minus 17. This is a team that should have won maybe 63 games, not 71. They way overperformed. They have better improved their pitching staff. That is a disaster area. They did sign Marcus Semien, and that's a big plus for them. Cincinnati, when they won 83 games, but their offenses, just like the previous year, they were terrible offense last year, and they actually improved to minus 22 runs this year, 21 runs. They have 3 double-digit positive players, but just too many negatives and 2 double-digit and negatives. And on the pitching side, good pitching, but this is an 81 team that minus 21 and plus 21 runs. This should have won 81 games. They won 83. They had 3 double-digit pitchers. You can see them there, Miley, Castillo, and Raleigh, and no double-digit negatives. So it's a good, nothing great, good pitching staff. The poor hitting, 81 win team should have balanced it out. 83 right there, pretty much. Colorado team. Again, almost same offense down as Cincinnati, minus 21 runs. Crone had a very good year. No double-digit negatives there, but the overall offense down almost 22 runs. The pitching, pretty much league average, slightly above. 1 double-digit pitcher in Marquez. Senza Taylor almost there. Between the two, This is a 76, 77 win team that won 74 games. Okay. The Dodgers. Dodgers previously was a huge hitting team and pitching team, very well balanced, but not this year. This year, the offense, while very good, was not nearly the power of previous years, and that really can go primarily to Cody Bellinger, who is a tremendous hitter, and look what he did this year, dragged the whole offense down. You have the 5 double-digit offensive players: Muncy, Pollock, Betts, Seager, and Turner. Turner, when you add in Washington, goes higher, of course. And Taylor almost gets there as well. Very good offensive team despite Bellinger. But look at the pitching. Best pitching staff in baseball. A phenomenal pitching staff, but unbalanced this year, not like it was in the previous year in terms of the hitting. You have 5 double-digit pitchers led off by Walker Buehler, Julio Arias. Buehler, really the second best pitcher in baseball in last year, second only to a Philadelphia pitcher that I'll be coming to shortly. But you could see the tremendous pitching staff that they've had. Their worst pitcher gave up only 3 runs. It's a tremendous pitching staff. This is a team with 150 runs. This is a team that should have won what's it, 110, 111 games, probably close to 111 games. They won 106, but there was another team in their same division, San Francisco, which is also about 111 win, should have been, but they're each knocking each other off and lowering it down to 106 or 107 wins. Okay, so they're just a tremendous team. Miami team. On offense, horrendous. Sandy Leon, of course, can't hit at all. They had no player that was in double-digit posts, was Starling Marte. And on the pitching side, this was an above-average pitching staff. We know they're young pitching, and you could see it there. You have the 2 double-digit pitchers, Rogers and Alcantara, and a whole host of solid pitchers behind them. This is a decent pitching team. This is a team that should have won about 72 wins, maybe 73. They got 67. So they have a lot to look forward to. They underperformed a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. But that's because their offense stank. And their pitching staff is really coming around. Now they got to fill in their hitting. The Milwaukee Brewers, pretty much average on the offense. This is a team that was the division winner, but their offense was not nothing to write home about. Jackie Bradley had a horrible season. Their top hitter was the player they got from Tampa Bay, Willie Adames, in this season, and he's the one that turned their season around. Obviously, Garcia also just made it into the double digits. Colton Wong, one of my favorite players, almost made it there. But their overall was pretty average as far as the offense goes. The pitching was their strength, obviously. Almost 56 runs to plus, 3 double-digit pitchers, including Corbin Burns, who won the Cy Young, but was closely beaten out in my numbers by the Philadelphia pitcher coming up and by Walker Buehler. But this is a tremendous pitching staff. 3 in the double digits, 1 almost made it into their into the double digits. Overall, this is a team that should have won about 92 wins. They won 95. They're a little bit outperformed, just slightly, their numbers, very slightly. Here's the New York Mets. The Mets. Almost 22 runs down. The catcher, McCann, didn't help them. Their top player, even though he played only a little bit over half the season, Brandon Nimmo. Everybody who knows me from all my talks to this chapter and to other chapters knows for years I've been beating the drums about Brandon Nimmo, how great a player he is, and the most overlooked player in Major League Baseball. However, last year I said, well, he's slightly below average in center field defensively and above average in the other two. Now that I have a third year, another year in there, he's above average in defensively in all three, left, center, or right. So whether it's offense, whether it's defense, the guy can play. And it's amazing how little they don't understand what a tremendous player is. The on-base percentage, you know what Vladimir Guerrero's on-base percentage was? Same as Brandon Nimmo's, 401. That's only part of what, his positives. But overall, he's a player that is overlooked tremendously. And the other double digits is Alonso. But overall, the team is down 22 runs on offense. On the pitching side, they had Jared Eichhoff, who was a disaster. And in just 19 and 2/3 innings, managed to get smashed unbelievably. They had two double-digit pitchers, even though DeGrom only pitched parts of the season. He was right up there with the other leaders pretty much overall, and Aaron Luke. Marcus Stroman almost made it into double digits. He is a very good pitcher and a great pickup for Chicago. But overall, their pitching staff was solid with those pitchers, plus almost 11 runs. This is a team that should have been about a 79 win team. They won 77, right in the same ballpark. That's where they should have been. Here's Philadelphia. A lot of Philadelphia people are probably online. And your offense pretty much dead average, plus a third of a run. You have tremendous performance by Bryce Harper, but he's really a DH. If the DH comes to the National League, he has to go to the DH. Look at that defense. He lost 8 1/3 runs on defense alone. That's why was not close to being the National League MVP, even though he had a tremendous year. Even considering the defense, he still had a tremendous year. But with that defense, he's got to go to the DH. You have Rhys Hoskins and McCutcheon up there, but you have the three players at the bottom, as you can see, who really didn't do any favors for your offense. On the pitching side, look at this. You're a third of a run here, 9 1/3 runs here. So this is an 83 win team, got 82 wins, right on the dot pretty much. You had two tremendous pitchers, including this real Cy Young winner. The real should have been Zach Wheeler. And you have a young pitcher who blossomed in midseason and really was spectacular in Ranger Suarez. No double-digit pitchers to hold you down, but Matt Moore and Vince Velasquez didn't do you any favors. So that's Philadelphia. Now to go to sad sack, Pittsburgh, that 161 game. That one tremendous player, Ryan Reynolds. But after that, just terrible, down to Kevin Newman, who was awful, down to 69 runs down on offense. Terrible offense, despite one terrific player. And the pitching matches. They're almost, who's worse is almost a toss-up. That's which is worse, the pitching or the hitting. No double-digit pitchers. David Bednar did get a decent amount. Will Crow was crushed. This is 135. This is a team down by 27. They were lucky to get 61 wins. This is the mid-50s, 54, 55 win team. They actually outperformed. It's hard to say that, but they outperformed at 61 wins. Uh, that that's bad when you say you're lucky and you got 61 wins. Here's St. Louis. St. Louis's offense was very good, 55, almost 55 runs, led by O'Neill and Goldschmidt and with monster numbers, and Carlson and Arenado. Harrison Bader almost made it into double. Only Andrew Kanizer was down here in the double negatives. Overall, a tremendous offensive team. The pitching, however, was while above average, was only somewhat. They had two double-digit pitchers in Wainwright and Gallegos, but just too many of these negatives. But they were +5. This is a 93 win team. They won 90. So they came very close to what the numbers should say. San Diego, sad. Here they have the best player in the National League, the real MVP of the National League, Fernando Tatis, one of the great players in the game today. They have Machado and Cronenworth in double digits, but then they have two anchors on the bottom, taking them down to the bottom of the ocean, for Profar and Caratini. And on the pitching side, and overall their offense, because of that, is only barely above average, 6.5 runs. And their pitching is -7. So this is an 81 win team. They won 79, right in the ballpark there. There's no outstanding pitcher. Melanson was their best pitcher, their closer. Musgrove was positive, but nothing to write home about. This is a team that just, a blah, 81 win team. That's all you can say about them, even though they have the best player in the National League in Fernando Tatis. That's a shame when you have the best player and you can only get a 81 win season. San Francisco Giants. Offense almost 90.5 runs, over 90.5 runs, 5 double-digit players, led off by Brandon Belt, Crawford, Darren Ruff, Mike Yastrzemski, and Buster Posey. Lamont Wade almost made it into the double digits. No double-digit negatives. This is a tremendous offensive team from last season, and pitching also tremendous. Over 69 runs, 3 double-digit all starters, Webb, Gaussman, and DeSclafani, a 4th reliever, Alvarez, and the 5th, Dominic Leone, a reliever, almost made it into the double digits with nobody particularly negative. This is another team that should have won about 111 games. 111, just like the Dodgers, maybe 112. But they have to face each other and knock each other off, so that he's got 107 wins. Now, finally, we come to Washington, which won 65 games and had the second best hitter in the National League in Juan Soto, a tremendous player. One of the Hall of Fame is coming, of course. You have Schwarber, had a great season both for Boston and for Washington. And you have Turner, who did wonderful for both Washington and the Dodgers. Josh Bell almost made it into the double digits. You had 2 players who were anchors, taking the team to the bottom, Keyboom and Robles. But overall, with that offense, it's a good offense. It is above average. So what do they do? Why do they only have 65 wins when they had an above average production on the offense? There it is. The disaster on the mound, 90.5 runs. One pitcher who was a premier pitcher, because when you add this to what he did for the Dodgers, he was up there amongst the top pitchers in the National League. But overall, the pitching, especially with the 3 pitchers on the bottom, Fede, Lester, and Corbin, as anchors to the staff, real anchors, they're down 90.5 runs. So this is the team, it's about a 65 win team. Hey, right on the button. Okay, so now let me go Does anybody have any questions before I go to the equally important screen of the players?
This
No?
is Dan.
No?
Levitt,
This is
thank-
Dan.
One question
Levitt,
for you.
One question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
I just was curious how
I
you.
just was curious
There's an
how
echo.
you.
Is that me?
There's an echo. Is that me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you? Okay.
You, okay.
I'll just do this quickly. How do you get from the runs to the wins? It looks like you're dividing by
Looks like
5.
you're dividing by 5.
Yes, it's 5 runs per win. Yes,
Got it.
5 runs per win. You got it?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I go? If not, I'll go to the position by position ratings. Now I have to explain what you're looking at. It's split into 2 halves. The left half is teams, is players with enough data to have confidence, super confidence in their rating. The right half is less confidence because there are less time, less outs. The left half, you have to have over the 3 years made 350 outs. 350 outs would be well over a season, generally speaking. So you have, and you also have to have had performed enough to make 30 outs in this season to get a rating at all. If you didn't perform up to that minimal level, you won't be rated on here. So somebody who missed last season or only had a few at bats last year won't be on this rating at all, even if they have the 350 outs over the 3 years. So and the outs is very important. That's why I list them, because that gives you the more outs, the more confidence you have in the numbers, in the rating itself, because you have a chance variation the smaller the data field is. So on this side, it's players with just over the 3 years, 200 outs that they created. And in this case, Darren Ruff with 265 outs. Okay, and also the minimum 30 in the last year. So I'm sure people are squinting. How is Darren Ruff the top-rated first baseman in the major leagues? Well, I have to go by what he's done, and he actually, as a right-handed hitter, you think maybe he only did that because he's a platoon hitter. No, he actually faced more right-handers than he did left-handers last year. Yes, he hit the left-handers better, but he also hit the right-handed pitchers pretty hard as well. Okay, so over the 3 years, he has actually put up a total run production per out of over a quarter of a run. And so what you're showing here, the name, his batting right, his age, well, his team thus far, the number of outs that he produced over the years, his RPO plus the defense plus an age adjustment. So there's 248 plus 2 plus 1 comes to 251. Okay, amongst the players who have more confidence in what their numbers say, the top is Freddie Freeman, then you see Paul Goldschmidt, Max Muncy, and so on. You can see them right down. Now you say, wait a minute, wasn't Vlad Guerrero was the best player in the American League? Why is he down here? Because his previous years, as you know, he was out of shape or whatever. He was he did not perform well. And this is a 3-year average, and the 3-year averaging is more likely to be right. However, when you're dealing with a player who comes in shape and is young like this, you can think that maybe he's going to repeat last year. But on normal, the 3-year averaging works out best. Okay, so you see whoever is there. Notice one of the poorest defensive players, and he's still the number one player there, is Freddie Freeman at -7. Look who's the best defensive first baseman amongst the qualified starters is Yulieski Gurriel. Now you know why he gets to play a lot, not just his offense. You have. Oh, let me explain the colors. I just took it for granted that people who've seen this before know what the colors are. At first base and in every position, only 30 players can be in the premier group. Can be starters, but only 15 can be in the premier. This is the premier group, those that give you a positive run production versus the player at the same position. So these are players who are the premier. These players are qualified to start in the major leagues. These under here, they're under the 30, but they lose you runs because they are not as good as the top 15. And so when you look at the total RPOs down here, you can actually measure the difference. While this person, Julio, only loses you these 0.004 runs per out, this person down here is losing you 25 or 0.025 runs for every out he gives out, even though he's qualified to start in the major leagues. In the major league, the blue is for people who are bench warmers, or should be bench warmers, and it is a if you look at Pujols down, he's been down there quite a while, and unfortunately, there's some players who get to play a lot and are down in this group. Okay, now you have here second base. You have Brandon Lau, who's also a negative on defense, but he carries the offense with it and is number one. The top defensive Seattle has a very nice. This Dylan Moore seems to be a really outstanding defensive player. He's up here as a qualifier primarily because of his defense, but that still doesn't get him into the premier group. He's still losing you runs. You have a Colton Wong is amongst the top players on defense and has been year in and year out. He's a tremendous player, and a wonderful pickup last year by Milwaukee. Okay. Now we look around down to the qualified starters. I don't have to explain. You can see, you can read, and then you have guys on the bench that should be on the bench. Not all of them are, but they belong there based on their performance. Now we go to the third base. The number one player is Alex Bregman. You have two players over here in the premier group who have not enough outs to put them over on the left side. Wisdom and Santiago Espinal, who had a half season last year. It seems to look like he is outstanding defensively. As far as the players who with a lot of data, you have Yohan Moncada way up there at +11 and Joey Wendell at +13 on defense. If you've seen Joey Wendell in the playoffs, particularly in 2020, you saw how nothing got by him. He's a tremendous defensive third baseman, but that still only gets him into the qualified starter, not into the area of being a premier player. Okay. If the DH comes to the National League, JD Davis, because he's -12 on defense, jumps right up into the premier group because he won't be this iron gloved individual. He will actually not need that glove to play. And here's the bench players. of the third base. Now we look at the shortstop. The Philadelphia members of SABR know how down I was on the acquisition by the Mets of Francisco Lindor. Yes, he's a premier player, but I knew what was going to happen next. Here's a player that's got a 10-year, over $300 million contract. He's barely into the premier group. How they can spend that much money on such bad evaluation. When you listen to WFAN, when they were acquiring him during 2020 and talking about how he's the greatest shortstop in baseball, I'm sitting there saying, have you never heard of Fernando Tatis? Have you never heard of Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Corey Seager, Trevor Story, Carlos Correa? It's ridiculous. And then they get Javier Baez as well. Nice players. I mean, but neither one of them ever get on base. And that's a problem. You look at, they don't look at the proper numbers. Wander Franco is already up here, even just in part. This kid is the real deal. It's the reason why they had to move Willie Adames, because this is if he doesn't get injured, he's a future Hall of Famer. You can write it down. Future Hall of Famer, Wander Franco. It is, and when you have that, as good a player as Willie Adames, and he is a tremendous. I followed him from when he was down in A-ball. When Tampa Bay traded for him, I told the guy at Baseball America, wow, that was some kind of deal that they got Willie Adames in. Well, he had to move. As good as Willie Adames is, Wander Franco is a future Hall of Famer. He had to move to make room. And here's the qualified to start, but giving up runs, not getting you runs. And down in the bottom, here's Andrelton Simmons. Yes, he's a +7 on defense. But when he first came up, he was a plus enormous on defense. He was fantastic, but he quickly declined. And everybody seems to remember that, but they don't remember he can't hit. And and they give him big contracts. It is just amazing to me that people talk, oh, you got to get Andrelton. The Yankees, the WFAN, I was listening, they want to get solve the shortstop problem they have, and they want to think, oh, we can get Andrelton Simmons. Yeah, now you really make it bad. Okay. Now, left field. Left field, we have Christian Yelich on top, Schwarber, O'Neill, and Canna. He's up here because he gets on base a lot. People underrate him a lot, and he's good. He's a good player, very good. Ravizarena, everybody knows who he is. Of course, Tampa Bay, because they're a small market team, won't be able to keep him unless there's competitive balance, and that's a shame. They should be able to keep a player like that. Their fan base can't grow unless they can keep some players, and they need the funds properly shared, because they're the other team in the game. One team doesn't play itself. There's two teams in a game. So these are your top left fielders. Chas McCormick in a portion of the season to Houston. Looks like he can play. It looks like he's very good on defense. You have Yelich has gone way down on defense, but still the best in the majors at his position. Robbie Grossman and Tyler O'Neill are both +11s on defense, and David Peralta, unheralded, +16. You have Mike Kaufman +15. These quite good defensive players, at that position. Of course, we know about Clint Frazier's problems at -13. Verdugo is not very good with Boston as well, as you can see. As far as the bench players, you see them there. We don't want to compare any of these starters to them. They're almost irrelevant. In center field, look at that number for Trout. It's off the scale. But Trout used to be a fantastic defense, but he's been injured this last couple of years, and I found that injuries often affect the player's defense more than his offense. That is, the guy can still come up the plate and stand there and hit, but defense is affected by injuries. Trout did come up, was fantastic initially, but his defense was sliding even before this. But this is the first time I've had him in the negative. And of course, Buxton can play anywhere on this planet. He is a tremendous defensive player. Springer is tremendous, but nothing like Mr. Buxton. Luis Robert for the White Sox is exceptional. Okay. Brett Phillips for Tampa Bay, he's right up there. You're looking players who some great players. You notice that Tampa Bay picked up in 2020 Manny Mario. Look what he does on defense, and you saw it on display in the playoffs. You can see almost from these numbers what Tampa Bay does, how they look at players, and how other teams let players go and make big mistakes on players. This is Cedric Mullins for Baltimore. For the Baltimore fans, he is plus on defense as well as plus on offense. So, and if the Mets are going to replace Nimmo and move them out of center field, who's +9 for Starling Marte, who's -6 on defense, that's a wonderful showcase for stupidity. Anyways, thank you. Pardon my comment. These are the players qualified to start in the major leagues. They have a right to be a starting player, but they actually lose you runs because these are the only the top 15 we make are plus players. And then you have your players who are at this point rated as bench players. Now we go to right field. Magnificent Juan Soto on top. Absolutely Hall of Fame, first ballot should be. And almost as good, Ronald Acuna and Mookie Betts is right behind him. Both of them are +16s on defense. You have Joey Gallo and Kyle Tucker, both +14s. And there's Bryce Harper, -14 on defense. Mike Yastrzemski, +11 on defense. And you see the guys on the right side would have play really well, but have limited numbers, so that the confidence level is not as high. And you have here's the players that are qualified to start at the major league level, but are not good enough. And look at Michael Conforto. He has come way down. His defense was never that bad, but now he seemed to have compounded his bad season offensively with a bad season defensively. And of course, repeatedly in the last few years, Charlie Blackmon has been abysmal on defense. And you have now, again, I show you the players on the bench players. The DHs, there would be more of them, but many players who were part-time DH, part-time playing other positions, actually played more of the other positions. So they got to be at their position playing. So these players are almost exclusively on the DH position. Yordan Alvarez, Nelson Cruz, and Ohtani and Stanton. these are big hitters. This is a big hitter position. And Miguel Cabrera, he's hurting his team. Catchers. Now, I should note about the rating here. I was kind of arbitrary on the defense because it's all based on controlling the running game. And with the emphasis on framing pitches, there's less emphasis on holding runners. And in my opinion, the stolen base now with that should be on a somewhat higher priority, especially since the running game disrupts the pitching, disrupts the other team more than more than the numbers would say. So I shaded it so that all the catchers, they're slightly more to the negative than I would normally do in that sense. But it doesn't change the relation because they're all shaded the same way. So you have the top hitter, Garver, who is very poor on the defense, but his home runs tremendous, almost as good as Perez in overall, but he's the plus on defense. And again, you look at the negatives, the really bad negatives. Houston's Castro can't hold anybody on, and of course amongst the guys sitting on the bench, well, many of them can't hold anybody on. The Wilson Ramoses, Kurt Suzuki's, and so on. Their numbers are atrocious, even if they're playing almost every day. Whereas most are at least within reason of average or you have Realmuto +6, Perez +6. You have others that are in the Roberto Perez, who is tremendous. That he's a +9. You players who Alex Avila was a +9, Mandy Pena, so on. You have so these are the premier catchers here, and these are the qualified starters here. You saw McCann, so terribly negative, but still, he is qualified starter because this position is mostly bad hitters, and you're comparing, apples to apples, not apples to oranges here. Only catcher to catcher, and these are the spares, those bench players. Now we go to the starting pitchers. Okay, the ratings are done the same exact way. It's per out, so the number of outs that apply to the hitters are the same number of outs that applies to the pitchers. So the number one pitcher in baseball over the last 3 years, Jacob deGrom. What? Ranger Suarez? How is that possible? He was fabulous in his short amount, and he got enough time for 477 outs. Well, that's a lot of outs. And he was spectacular. You have Tanner Houck for Boston, who has been spectacular. You saw him in the playoffs. The guy can flat out pitch. You have the Dodgers with 4 top number ones because there are 30 teams. So there's 30 number one starters, but the top 15 are the top half of the number one. And Dodgers have 4 of the top, 11 pitchers in the game. 4 of the top 11. They're all in the top half of the number one. And if he comes back and is healthy, they have a 5th in the top half of the number one starters. Is that incredible? Philadelphia will have 2. We'll have 2 with Wheeler and Suarez. Okay, And so there you can see it, you can read it directly. Okay, the remaining number one starters, the next 15. The next 15 are right here. And you can read them right off. You have the two Atlanta pitchers right there, Martin and Freed. And look, Pittsburgh has somebody who looks like could be a number one. We'll have to see if when he adds on more outs, Tampa Bay with Drew Rasmussen. We'll have to see when he adds more outs, but they're in the number one. Here's Marcus Stroman that the Chicago Cubs signed away from the Mets. And if they had kept him, they could have had DeGrom, Scherzer, and Stroman. 1, 2, 3. 3 number one starters. And don't tell me in New York, with the money they have, the money they threw away on Lindor, that they couldn't have signed Marcus Stroman for a lot less than his real value is. The number two starters, the top number two starters, the top half is led by Lance McCullers. You see and here's another Atlanta pitcher, Ian Anderson. You have a young pitcher in Tristan McKenzie on Cleveland. And John Means from Baltimore in the top half of the number two starters. And has been for pretty much his whole career with Baltimore. A tremendous pitcher. He's by no means a DeGrom, but he has been a very solid star. The bottom half of the number twos, as you can see here, which includes more Milwaukee pitchers at 30 Peralta. The Mets did lose somebody when Lucchesi went down right away, but he's been injured a lot. So maybe it should have been expected. And the top half of the number three, they're the last in the green because that's the last of the premier starters. I love Rich Hill. He just hangs around. He does his job. He's been year in and year out, moving from team to team and performing excellent. Hendricks used to be way up much higher, but his season last year was really bad. So that knocked him down, but still in the premier grouping. Okay. Now, in the bottom half of the number threes is headed up by Pablo Lopez and so on. You can read them clearly. You go up to the top half of the number four starters. Now, here's an interesting one for Philadelphia. Both Eflin and Gibson are number four starters after 3 years. But last year, Gibson was essentially one of the top pitchers in the major leagues. He had a tremendous breakout season. And that's not from a pitcher who just showed up yesterday. 1,220 outs. He's been pitching every game for all 3 years. That's one of the top numbers in the major leagues. He is a reliable starter. And so you can hope if he can match what he did last year, and you've already had 2 number ones, Philadelphia has an interesting hope at their pitching for this year coming up. Okay, the bottom half of the number four starters here. When Arizona went out and spent all that money to get the Madison Bumgarner, it was just, what are they thinking? He had not been pitching well for a couple of years. Didn't make much sense. Did not make much. And here is Robbie Ray, the Cy Young winner. He's the top half of the number 5 pitcher. So that's his 3-year average. Yes, last year he was in the top half of the number 2s. The hope for Seattle that he can repeat what he did last year, but based on 3-year averaging, oh my God. And then we come down to the bottom of the number of 5 pitchers, and here we go to the bench players, and leading the top, Steven Matz. It's really hard to understand how a front office comes to make the decisions they do. It's unbelievable how they spend money and they don't know what they're getting. But then they watch Tampa Bay with no money, with picking up pieces here and there that other teams don't even want. And they won 100 games. And the previous year, they had the best record in the American League. And what's going on here? Well, there's a huge difference in the front office and what they use as their tools. So I'm going to open it up to questions here, since I've gone over both of these forms, one for the team, one for the players, are equal value. One is where you can see what the players produce during the year for their team. The other evaluates the player at their position on a quality basis, where the team is on a quantity basis. So any questions?
What do you do with prospects?
Well, I used to, when I was working from Montreal and Boston, I had them make the arrangements with house sports data. So I would get on a weekly basis the minor league, all the full season minor league down to A ball. And I was able to run the minor league data and normalize it to the major league. So I knew what players were coming, who was going to be in the Hall of Fame, even there that owed me down to AA. However, since Stats Inc. bought House Sports Data, you got to give an arm and a leg to sell your next baby to get the data. Stats Inc., which was a tremendous advance at the start. They started out, and I used all their data. Now I had to go to retro sheet, as I said earlier, because they've become a negative on research for the public. And so what I do best I can is look at the player itself with the raw data without running it, because I can't download any more unless I want to go bankrupt and sign my soul away to Stats Inc. So I make educated guesses, usually pretty good, especially on the pitching side, as to who looks good. I'll give you a clue on the pitching, because pitching is kind of funny. Pitching, as you know, is hard to predict. But one thing I found that is very good, and it's really only applies to the starters. And that is this. If you look at the starters, what you want to see is how they miss the bats. And now, how do you know how they miss the bats? If let's say if the person pitched 100 innings, only gave up 70 hits, but struck out 150 and only walked 25. So what you're looking at is you want to see the pitcher with the greatest difference between the strikeouts and the walks. So if he had 175 strikeouts and 25 walks, that's 150 difference. Plus, on the other side, if he's not putting anybody on base through the hits, so they're not getting hits and they're not walking, and he's striking them all out. So there's a pitcher that he's around the plate and they still can't hit him. He's around the plate, he still can't hit him. But it has to be over a lot of, it's the maximum distance. I found essentially that each year, one of the top 3 in that grouping is going to be a tremendous pitcher, almost each year. but it's in the entire minor leagues. But that's without my software running the thing. I have to eyeball it. And same way with the when I said about Willie Adames, I had to eyeball it. But what did I see in Willie Adames? He was like 16 years old or 17 years old. I think he was 16, and he was at full season low A ball, and he was not outstanding, but he held his own. When I see a player that young hold his own against older players, several years older than him, I told Baseball America right away, watch this kid. He's going to be a star. This is, and I thought that Tampa Bay did a steal to get him. So I can look at something, but you take the age into consideration, and then you look at all the other stuff. So it's a judgment. It's a judgment thing when you don't have the software to run the data like I used to do.
Do you like
other
the Giants? The Giants' chances of repeating last year?
Well, we have to see how how the free agent signings go and everything. Normally by now I should be able to tell you, because normally by now the teams, pretty much every free agent has been signed, and so you know what the team looks like, and you can evaluate. You can't. How I'm looking at it, I assume with all their money the Dodgers are going to stay strong. They're going to make sure. They're like the Yankees. They're using the rest of the league as a farm system. Okay, so they have more money. Nobody has more money than the Yankees. The Yankees are just, it's a form of cheating. Frankly, this is the number one form of cheating in the game. It's, I don't use that word lightly. It was as if you go out and you're playing against another team in amateur, right? In amateur league, and they bring in ringers from professionals to play. You know right away that's cheating. So first day of the season, Pittsburgh walks out, and here comes the Dodgers loaded with a team, not only players from their farm system, but all the players they picked up, the Mookie Betts and all that. There's no level playing field, and competitive balance is something we should be screaming about. That is something that is a given, that there must be competitive balance. Otherwise, all you're doing is allowing the Yankees, the Dodgers, and some, especially the Yankees, to cheat every year.
You became quite a lightning rod during your time in Boston. Do you want to talk about any of that here?
I can, sure, I can do that. Yes, I could. It was nationwide. Sports Illustrated contacted me. They wanted to do a story. I was trying to keep my head down. I told them no. It is a situation where we had not re-signed Roger Clemens. We tried. We made an offer to him, which was the highest in history for a player. But Toronto outbid us. And so the media in Boston wanted, we're going after Dan Duquette. Bad. They're serious. And once they found me, they used me as the punching bag to get after Dan Duquette. And and of course, the ignorance of the writers in the early, in the mid 90s, they were all hostile to statistical analysis at that time. Totally hostile. Who's this person with these crazy numbers? You had all these articles in Boston attacking me and describing me physically, guys who had never even seen me, who weren't even down in Florida at the time. So it was, I had to keep my head down. But the problem for me was This was 97. We had a situation coming up in the fall where we were going to have a union election, a union-wide election. And I was going to be running the campaign for the new president to kick out the old president. I had already kicked out one president running campaign earlier. And so here's the situation by the end of by the late part of the season. I'm running all over New York City from building to building to building in an election campaign in a very large union and we won the election. But it didn't help me with Boston at the time. It just because I couldn't. My primary job was not the baseball. My primary job was the union. So I had this situation, a dual situation, with on the job at the same time as I was trying to keep my head down from in Boston, and so that's as much as I could say about the Boston. After the season was over, my contract ended. Obviously, I knew that would happen because of what happened. I tried to. The only team I contacted after that was Baltimore, and the general manager there agreed to hire me, but Angeles, the owner, vetoed it, and not that long after fired that GM, who went over to Atlanta. So, can you hear me? What happened to my screen? Okay, my screen went off because I had not done anything with the mouse. Okay, does that answer your question? Hello?
Thank you. Yep, it did.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. And, do you still keep alligators or crocodiles in your home?
I used to, but I'm almost 78 years old. So several years ago, a nature preserve down in North Carolina sent up a whole crew, and I gave them over to them because I was too old to take care of them anymore. I'd had them for like 25, 30 years. There's a whole story behind them because the owner of the preserve down in North Carolina didn't think I was telling the truth as how big Louie was as a caiman. Oh, spectacle caimans don't get that. Our big boy here is, he's not even bigger than Big Boy. And when their crew came up, they took one look at Louie. They called back to him North End saying, "He's 4 times the size of Big Boy." So we actually have a 53-minute video on YouTube rehoming the caiman. That took him 53 minutes, and in the end, jumping his back, as you see on the TV, with to wrestle him and get him out. But yes, I used to. No longer. I'm not a young man anymore, and I had to give him up because I'm. It takes a certain level of energy to take care of large animals like that.
Thank you.
Any more questions? My wife is saying, "Oh, tell them about the Irish Wolfhound. That's a huge dog. That's our dog." Not quite the size of Big Louie, though. Any other questions?
I think we're good, Mike.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, the video will be up in a few days.
Okay, and hopefully it's shareable. I can send it around.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to talk to all good baseball fans like you.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Okay. Good night.